Gil Martin here. The Locked On road to the NHL Trade Deadline continues. The Toronto Maple Leafs acquired defenseman Jake McCabe, forward Sam Lafferty, and two conditional fifth-round picks, one in 2024 and one in 2025, from the Blackhawks for a first-round pick in 2025, a second-round pick in 2026, forward Joey Anderson, and forward Pavel Gogolev. With us is David Morassutti of Locked On Leafs. And David, your thoughts about the acquisition of Jake McCabe?
Yeah, it was obviously just another surprising deal for Kyle Dubas. We weren't expecting something to happen so quickly, right? It wasn't really any indication that a deal was forthcoming. But, it's funny because everyone's looking at this trade right now and saying Leafs are going all in on this year. But funny enough, unlike the O'Reilly and Achari trade, Jake McCabe still has 3 more years left on it, including this year. So he'll have 2 more years left on his deal for the future. And Sam Lafferty also has another year on his deal. So in a way, it's kind of a now deal, but still kind of keeps the Leafs, in a good position because they're not investing in a bunch of free agents right now.
Where do you see McCabe fitting in on the blue line in Toronto?
That's an interesting question. He's a left shot, but he does play the right side, and that's where the Leafs have the biggest need right now is a defender on the right side. So my initial thinking here is he probably might go on that second pairing with Mark Giordano, or they might even end up having him play on the left side at some point. I think Sheldon Keefe doesn't necessarily always keep his defensemen in the same spot all the time. He likes to move guys around a little bit here, but my initial thought here is that you're either going to have him on the right side on the second pairing with Mark Giordano, or you're going to have him play with Morgan Rielly. But what this also does is this now means that Rasmus Sandy and Timothy Liljegren aren't going to be needed to play above their weight right now. And even Jake McCabe, when he was in Chicago, probably miscasted a little bit, wasn't playing with very good players. I want to see now, how does he play with much better capable defensive partners?
Yeah, it should be interesting to see how he responds. How about Lafferty? Where do you think he fits into the Maple Leafs lineup?
This is just it's similar to Achari where he can play the wing or at center. I'm thinking maybe he might go on that third line. He's got a little bit of scoring touch to him, and that bottom six definitely needs it. That it's funny because on the podcast, Mike and DeStefano and I were talking about what exactly the Leafs need. He said, well, they need a blue liner for sure, and they could use some help in the bottom six. And Kyle Dubas just did both of that in one trade. Lafferty's got 10 goals this year. That's pretty good for a guy who plays mostly bottom 6 minutes.
Do you think there's another move between now and the deadline Friday afternoon?
I mean, the Leafs just don't have a lot of cap space right now. I mean, it's funny enough because when you look at the assets they've given up, they didn't really give up the assets you would expect. Right? They technically still have their first round pick for next year. They have their third round pick this year. They pretty much have avoided they went all in without going all in. They still have some assets look to be done. I don't foresee there being much more Kyle Dubas could do. What I could see, there is a bit of a logjam right now in terms of the cap because the Leafs are using LTIR right now with Matt Murray out. Once Matt Murray is available to come back, they got to make the room to bring him back. So I do think another trade could happen where somebody is going to be moved off the team. Not sure who exactly that could be. They got a bit of a logjam up front, so maybe it could be a forward. Maybe an Alexander Kerfoot could get moved. He's somebody that has been playing on the fourth line and isn't being paid to play on the fourth line. So I'm wondering if there is a deal like that to free up some cap space to bring Matt Murray back once he's activated off LTIR.
Your thoughts? I mean, it seems like so many teams in the East are going all in, and there's like an arms race where all these teams in advance of the trade deadline are adding players for the playoff push. What are your thoughts about all that?
I mean, it's tough because Tampa Bay just made their big move to get Tanner Jeannot. You saw the Boston Bruins get Dmitry Orlov. Those are the teams you're competing right up against. So I wouldn't say that this is a situation where the Leafs are reacting too much to what's happening with the teams that they're going up against. I really do think this is just they realized they had these needs well before the other trades were made, and they finally were able to pull the trigger on them. You have to kind of keep in mind that of who you're going to be playing in the playoffs, and a lot of teams in the East seem to be doing that right now. I mean, it's been a wild few days for all those in the East, but I think the Leafs have done a really good job to not overreact to them and pay exorbitantly high prices for players that I don't think went for as high as I expected. Leafs still kept their top prospect in Matthew Nyes. They still have their first round pick in 2024. Like, this is some pretty tidy moves for Kyle Dubas, considering what we've been seeing other teams pay for certain players.
Well, it's going to be an interesting stretch drive, and be sure to check out Locked On Leafs for more on the Maple Leafs' latest editions, and keep it dialed in to Locked On NHL all along the road to the NHL trade deadline. This is the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.